Hey guys, I'm reviewing Black Adam in this video, and my review is definitely going to be a little mixed. There were some parts that I was really disappointed by, and others that I thought were just good fun. Overall, I would say that the point of the Black Adam film was to show that Black Adam is a tough badass and that he wasn't a traditional hero. Do I think the movie served the purpose of demonstrating those two things? Definitely. Dwayne Johnson claimed that this film would establish a new hierarchy of power and that it would be made for the fans. I suppose it depends on what kind of fan you are, but I think that this film kept those promises with the post-credits scene alone for quite a few. And yes, this video will contain spoilers. Tonally, I thought the film was okay. I could have done without all the music synced up to the fights. It doesn't necessarily fit with what I think of Black Adam. The plot was pretty low stakes. It reminded me a lot of the Suicide Squad films in that there was a dramatic buildup in the first two acts, and the main villain was just shoved in at the end. For all the hype around the crown of Sabbac in the movie, we only get the actual character for a few seconds. Black Adam and the JSA are left to fight Sabbac's avatar. And the only reason the stakes at the end were what they were was because Black Adam wasn't present at the beginning of the final fight, which would have helped avoid the death of Dr. Fate. And I'll speak more on what I thought about Black Adam surrendering in a minute. The other side of the plot involves Tef Adam trying to live up to his son's memory as champion, which I think is mostly pointless. At the beginning of the movie, we, as the audience, as well as the citizens of Kahndaq, were led to believe that Tef Adam was the champion of Kahndaq. He saved people from Intergang, and the people hailed him as the champion. At the film's end, he had saved people from Sabbac's avatar, and the people hailed him as a champion again. So he was in the exact same spot as a character at the beginning and the end of the film. He didn't even take up the spot as ruler of the country. So not only did his role not change, but mentally he isn't a hero, which is precisely what he was saying at the beginning. He reminds me of Sam Wilson as Captain America, in that at the end of Avengers Endgame, Steve Rogers hands Sam Wilson the shield and says, "You are Captain America." Fast forward to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He gives up the shield, has to get it back, and then becomes Captain America at the end. But if you didn't watch the series, you wouldn't have missed a beat. You would have just assumed that he did, in fact, become Captain America. This film felt like this almost could have been a JSA film with Black Adam as the villain. Less focus could have been put on Black Adam and it wouldn't have mattered. Now, I think the JSA shouldn't have been in the film for other reasons, which I'll talk about later. As I mentioned before, the movie's point seems to be, look how tough Black Adam is, he can beat anybody. And to be fair, you don't need a well put together plot for that. Now let's talk about Black Adam. If I'm being objective here, I'm not sure that we got the character Black Adam so much as we got The Rock cosplaying as Black Adam. This isn't a case of one of those egregious miscastings that are done for agenda-driven reasons. It just comes down to the fact that this is The Rock. How many movies have you seen where Dwayne Johnson plays practically the same guy in every film, which is just himself? I don't think his acting was terrible. Still, I believe that Black Adam is more arrogant. I think that he wouldn't adopt modernisms like trying to imitate Clint Eastwood or take on some catchphrase like any average superpowered moron. He wouldn't feel the need to fit in. I think he would have immediately taken control of Kahndaq. Not as a dictator, but as a strong protector. But he would have ruled them. He sure as hell wouldn't have surrendered to have himself frozen in suspended animation, left completely ineffectual while the world burned down around him. These aren't my opinions on how Black Adam should act. I'm telling you how he worked in the comics. I also didn't care for the change to his origin story, and that leaves out the fact that he was not depicted as serving alongside Naboo and Prince Khufu, the original incarnation of Hawkman, but rather having him be a slave. The problem I have with that is that it doesn't add anything to his character. It didn't make him nobler. His original actions were done out of vengeance and later on to honor his son's memory. It seems like they just added that part to his backstory for the dialogue so that he could say that he used to be a slave and now he's a god and he won't bow to anyone. It does reflect his New 52 origin, but that change to his story in the comics didn't make sense either, because while they changed that, they kept pretty much all of his post-crisis, pre-New 52 history, albeit condensed to fit into the new timeline. This means his being a slave didn't change his actions between reboots. He did the same things. So the question has to be asked, if he's shown to be the same guy and makes the same choices, then what's the point in adding that change to his character? I also want to talk briefly about Adriana and her son Amon. In the comics, Amon is Adriana's brother, not her son. I'm not sure why they made that change. And even though the circumstances are relatively different, they play a similar role in Black Adam's life. And I think the plot would have been better served if it didn't involve the JSA and instead focused on Tef Adam building the Black Marvel family like he did in the comic series 52. One last nitpick about Black Adam, it was bizarre seeing him without hair. Now I want to talk about the most disappointing part of the film, which was the JSA. I am biased. The JSA is my favorite corner of the DC universe. All of you Batman fans can suck it. No offense, but I think a lot of people like Batman just because he gets the most exposure in TV and movies. Go read some comics, you nerds. But seriously, I didn't like how the JSA was represented as individuals or how they functioned as a team. So much so that I would have preferred that they weren't in the movie at all. Stargirl did a better version of the JSA. Hell, I think Smallville did a better version of the JSA. First, as a group, there were only 4 members, 2 of whom were newbies. None of them was really fleshed out, nor was anything about the team or their history explained. There isn't a JSA HQ with all their memorabilia, not even a photograph. We get the original Atom for a few seconds on a Zoom call. We don't even know what era the JSA was founded. They don't even call themselves the Justice Society of America, even though the A is present in the logo. They're just the Justice Society, an international task force or something, and they're working alongside Amanda Waller, which is weird. This is not the JSA. You can't have the team being led by a pragmatist like Hawkman without having someone like Jay Garrick to be the conscience of the group. And you can't have a guy like Fate with a head full of prophecies without someone like Wildcat to keep the team grounded. You can't have 2 newbies like Atom Smasher and Cyclone without the guiding light of Alan Scott. Pun intended. The JSA works in the comics because they are a team of different people with different skill sets. However, they also work, even in the modern world, because of the time that they represent. I'm sure many out there would say that a Golden Age team with old-fashioned values doesn't belong in the gritty, more realistic world presented in the DC Extended Universe, but I don't think they could be more wrong. I believe that a comic book accurate JSA would balance out that darker tone that we've seen so far. I think the presence of the JSA would have allowed Superman to save his father from the tornado in Man of Steel because he wouldn't have been afraid of how people would react to his powers. I think it would have prevented him from killing Zod because the JSA would have inspired him to believe that there is always another way. I think the JSA would have prevented Ben Affleck's Batman from going full Dark Knight Returns in Batman vs. Superman. They would have made Wonder Woman not feel so alone and alienated, being the only superpowered being for the better part of a century. The JSA would have entirely reshaped the DCEU. The JSA series saw a revival in 1999 and continued on until Flashpoint in the reboot of DC. This was when DC's heroes were becoming darker, more violent, and more morally ambiguous. The story Infinite Crisis serves as a critique of the same kind of things that we're seeing now in the DCEU. During this period, a story took place with the JLA and JSA fighting alongside each other, during which Superman, the greatest superhero, literally tells the JSA that they are an inspiration and role models, not just to the Justice League, but to the superhero community as a whole. Now looking at the characters individually, they race swapped 2 of the 4 members of the JSA. And seriously, what does Hollywood have against redheaded characters? So when Black Widow showed up in the MCU, they were like, okay, that's enough of that. Gingerphobia is a real issue, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. But they took Cyclone, the ditzy fangirl, and turned her into a super genius capable of performing nanosurgery, and she also throws tornadoes. To prevent some fanboy from correcting me, yes, I know that Maxine has a high IQ in the comics, but the movie version is like they fused Cyclone with Mr. Terrific. Atom Smasher in the comics, while a younger generation member, is still far more experienced than Cyclone. But in the movies, he's a goofball. He's the comedic relief. It's like they took Tom Holland's Spider-Man and Ant-Man from Civil War and fused them together. Also, how did he inherit his powers from his uncle? How does that work? Dr. Fate was vastly underpowered. I can't even remember them mentioning Nabu, the Lord of Order, but most importantly, no mention of his wife Inza. In the comics, Inza was more than just his wife. She was a companion on some of his adventures. They've even joined souls to create a more powerful version of Dr. Fate, and she was one of his successors after his death. But in the Dr. Fate comic tie-in, they allude to him being gay, although they don't elaborate on that in the movie, and he dies, so I'm not sure why they made that change. And don't even get me started on Hawkman. No mention of reincarnation or his lover Shira. His whole shtick is that he's the tough guy and he doesn't kill. He's a physically stronger Batman in this movie. In fact, you could almost look at this as an alternate take on Batman vs. Superman. The whole plotline of him and Ken Nelson worrying about the other dying falls flat to me. As a member of the audience, I don't know enough about this team's history or the individual character's history to care if one of them dies. But enough ranting about the JSA. How about that Superman cameo? Apparently, Dwayne Johnson and his production company had been working on getting Henry Cavill back as Superman for 6 or 7 years because the previous Warner Bros. Leadership didn't want him. But I thought it was nice seeing him even for just a few seconds. While I thought that the plot of Black Adam was largely pointless and that the JSA was done dirty, it was still a fun action movie to watch. And seeing superhero fare that wasn't part of Marvel Phase 4 was like taking a breath of fresh air after spending hours in a fart-filled room without windows. And let's be honest, none of us were expecting a top-level superhero film, but I think that The Rock delivered on his promises. Also, with Superman, Shazam, and Black Adam all existing in the same universe now, I'm excited to see what kind of fights we'll get in the future. Let me know what you guys thought of Black Adam in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Also, hit that notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. I'll see you all next time. Bye.